It's a little after 5 o'clock Eastern time. It's the conference championship weekend of the 2023 NFL playoffs. Welcome to the FTN Bets NFL betting show. I'm your host, Tom Hannifan. I'm joined, of course, by my fellow Eagles fan, Chris Meaney, and the great Mike Randle. We are very excited about the two conference championship games going down this Sunday, and we have everything to get you ready. For those of you watching us live, we invite you to get involved in the chat and let us know what you'd like us to weigh in on. This is for you, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications on YouTube. Comment and like us as well. Still to come, it'll be our patented 3-and-out best bet segment. At the conclusion of the show, we'll get Chris and Mike's bronze, silver, and gold picks for the weekend. And of course, we always recommend you keep an eye on our official bet tracker, FTN alerts, and of course, FTNBets.com. You can try a free 3-day trial of FTN Daily at FTNDaily.com right now. And speaking of FTNDaily.com, thanks to Prize Picks, you're getting 99% off Joe Burrow's passing prop for this Sunday. So all the way down from 265.5 all the way to half a passing yard for Sunday's AFC Conference Championship game. So check the Prize Picks pick tracker this weekend at FTNDaily.com as our analysts dish out picks for both conference championship games. Mike, I think it's safe to say Burrow's probably going to have a yard passing this weekend. It should be great.
Yeah. Every once in a while, we get a gift. Do not look a gift horse in the mouth, guys. I think He is going to have over. It's a great program that we have, that we work here with Prize Picks. So take a look at it. It's a great opportunity to nail down one of a big payout, 5X, 3X, 10X, whatever you want to do. Yes, that's a nice gift one. I remember one earlier this year, guys, LeBron James to score a basket. I mean, there are some gifts sometimes, guys. Take advantage of it because you're already up one leg of that parlay.
Hey, man, the NFL season's almost over. We're all going to be really sad very soon. So let's take advantage of it. Are we doing a preview of the Pro Bowl weekend flag football games and one-legged sack race and all the stuff that's going down? Because that there could be a lot of money to be made, Chris. I don't know what you think.
I may take the week off.
That's a great idea. You need to recover.
Yeah,
You've not been well lately.
It's a busy time of the year. There's a lot of sports going on, and as Randall said, I mean, Prize Picks given gifts lately across all sports, and the best thing about Prize Picks, in my opinion, is that you can just mix and match across all the different sports that they have to offer, and they have to offer a lot. On Tuesdays, everybody knows it's Taco Tuesday. You sit back, eat some tacos, and take advantage of some of the promos that they have over there as well. So we have a free pick tracker over at FTNDaily.com, and a lot of the edges, there are some edges over at Prize Picks compared to other books. You'd be surprised, like significant edges, like 5-6 yard differences between, say, FanDuel and DraftKings compared to Prize Picks. So there are some edges over there, and we have a free Discord channel as well for people to jump into.
There's a lot to look at. So we're going to dive into this weekend's slate of games, all taking place on Sunday, of course, the AFC and NFC Conference Championship games. We're going to start with the NFC Championship game, as that'll be happening first on Sunday. That's at 3 p.m. Eastern on Fox. The number 1 seed, the Philadelphia Eagles, hosting the number 2 seed, the San Francisco 49ers. Of course, the Eagles defeated the Giants in the previous round. Meanwhile, San Francisco defeated the Dallas Cowboys in a laughable finish. So this is, for what many people much of the season were expecting to be the NFC Championship game. As you can see, that line right now is -2.5 for Philadelphia. Chris was kind of touching on it. These lines in both games have been extremely close. So this is where prop betting is really going to be your friend. Money line, yeah, you can obviously rely on that, but this is something that's going to be changing up until game time. Mike, I want to start with you on this, and we were talking about it before we got started with the broadcast, is that Lane Johnson was reported as a full practice participant today for the Philadelphia Eagles. The same thing for Avonte Maddox. Linebacker TJ Edwards was limited in practice. Those are 3 big names in regards to this Philadelphia defense. Do you see them having similar success as to what the Cowboys did against Brock Purdy and company in the last round?
Yeah, I'm concerned very much about the 49ers here. And I've liked the 49ers. I love Kyle Shanahan. But to me, in this game, Tom, it's Eagles all the way through. And we've seen the narrative. We have seen teams go against these high-powered offenses, Giants against the Patriots twice. And the key is you have to get there with 4. On the flip side here, this Niners offense is just very limited. Guys, they traded a ton to get Christian McCaffrey. He's stretching his calf out on the biggest drive there against the Cowboys. At the end, they're going with Elijah Mitchell. I don't see it. Brock Purdy's been fantastic. Mr. Irrelevant becomes relevant. But we've seen these quarterbacks when they're rookies get into these situations, whether it's Ben Roethlisberger, Joe Flacco, Sean King back with Tampa Bay. We've seen this. They're going to ask him to do him a lot. He's going to be on the road. We know short pass to McCaffrey, short pass to Kittle. I do think, Tom, that the Eagles defense is going to disrupt him. I think the Eagles crowd is going to do what the Eagles crowd does. I don't see it. I know the line is close and a lot of money's coming in on the Eagles and all the sportsbooks are saying we need the Niners. I get it. But Brock Purdy, is the clock going to strike 12? I think it may. And the Eagles getting healthy at the right time.
Chris, I want to get your take on Brock Purdy. You and I have our biases as Philadelphia Eagles fans, but at the same time, he has been outstanding and undefeated as the starter for the San Francisco 49ers. Coming into this weekend, it's just a different test, and he was running all over the place. He was running for his life quite a bit against that Dallas front seven. This is an Eagles front seven that recorded 70 sacks during the regular season. This is what they do, perhaps better than anybody else in the NFL. You cap that off with on Sunday, Chris. The weather is expected to be anywhere from as warm as 50 degrees to as cold as about 35 degrees with a possibility of rain that's cropping up. Do you give the edge to the Philadelphia defense, or do you see Brock Purdy continuing his winning ways?
I do give the edge slightly to the Eagles defense, but I mean, these two teams are very, very similar. I mean, defensively for sure. They're both teams that can get after the quarterback. They can create turnovers and they get some pressure. You know, Shanahan's going to put Purdy into a situation to have some success in this game. We've seen it all year. I'm known as now the Purdy hater because of a little bit of a rant on Mean Streets where I thought it was a little unfair that he was named as a Rookie of the Year finalist for only playing 6 regular season games.
I
He's
agree
basically
with you on
been
that.
perfect, but he only played 6 games. He's been good in the playoffs as well. I've been very impressed with him. I am not at all a hater. I think he's been very accurate. I think he's done a really good job. Last week was his worst game, though. In the regular season, he had at least 2 passing touchdowns in every game. He only had over 250 passing yards once. Dallas got some pressure, and I noticed the pocket collapsed quite a bit. Now, he made some plays, but now we have an Eagles team that you just alluded to it. I mean, the most sacks in football. They got 75 sacks here, 82 from the Bears and 84, the most sacks we've seen in 40 years. That's including the playoffs, a full season. They got 4 guys with double-digit sacks. Hassan Reddick's got 16. He had a couple last week. I think the pressure is going to be in his face the entire game. And if the Eagles can find some offense early on, you know, he's going to drop back and throw the ball more than I think Shanahan and the Niners want him to. Shanahan's been a very conservative play caller over the course of his career. He was conservative last week. He was able to stick with the run game, even though it wasn't working, and CMC was on the sidelines, like Mike's mentioned as well. If they get behind in this game, he's going to have to drop back. He's going to have to be a little bit more aggressive. Last week, he was able to afford maybe not to be as aggressive because he had a quarterback on the other side in Dak that had turnovers all year long, and really that cost the Cowboys in that game with the 2 turnovers that Dak had. It was a huge swing at the end of the first half and early in the second half. So I think he's going to have a tough go as well. I really do. I think it's going to be a phenomenal matchup, but the Eagles pass defense is their strength, right? That's their strength. They allowed the fewest, as you see on the board, 5.5 yards per attempt. That's number 1 in all of football. On the right, the Niners check a lot of boxes all over the place. Look at top 5 basically everywhere. Number 1 in terms of points allowed per game. But this Eagles pass rush is really good. They got 2 solid corners, which I don't think the Cowboys could say they have 2 solid corners. This is going to be a tough go, I think, for Purdy this weekend.
Mike, let's flip the field. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles offense, rather, against this Niners defense. A lot of questions surrounding Jalen Hurts and his health. Obviously, played the last week of the season against the New York Giants to secure the number 1 seed, then had a bye. Then the way that you saw him perform against the New York Giants, I know we're going to get to a bevy of Eagles players during our 3 and out segment, but what do you expect from Jalen Hurts and this offense? Because there have been a number of different examples this season where they can blow the roof off you in the passing game or the running game, but there was pretty good balance this past weekend.
Yeah, the big key here is the Eagles' offensive line is the most dominant offensive line in football. So the narrative or the path for the Niners to win this game would be for their offense to be able to control the ball and their defense just to overpower the Eagles' offense. I don't see it. I mean, this is still a San Francisco defense that gave up 34 points to the Raiders in Week 17. This is still a San Francisco defense, guys. If you watch that Seattle game against San Francisco, if Geno Smith doesn't turn that ball over as they're driving, they may not even be here. It's not like they dominated Seattle in that game. And this is a much better team that we have right now in Philadelphia than we had with San Francisco. I think they'll be able to run it. I think Miles Sanders and Kenny Gainwell both. Dallas Goedert is coming to his own. I just wrote him up for Mojo here at FTN as a great investment. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and this solid offensive line. That is the critical point to me. Jalen Hurts, we'll get to him in the 3 and out segment. Little banged up. Not sure how much he's going to rush, but certainly he's got a bevy of receivers. He's got a great tight end. He's got a ton of guys who can run. The offensive line will protect him. I just don't believe that this Niners defense is that good, Ravens of 2000, etc., that they're going to be able to disrupt Hurts enough. And if they do, he can still run a little bit. I just think it's too much. I think there are too many options here for this Eagles offense.
Chris, do you think this is a similar game plan for what the Eagles dealt with? I'm thinking about their first game earlier this season against the Dallas Cowboys, where essentially they just ran either a 2-man or a triple option at Micah Parsons. And they constantly put him in conflict. They constantly put him in a position where Parsons had to make a decision and inevitably could never be right. Do you expect them to try and execute something similar against Nick Bosa, their defensive end? Because he has been a monster for San Francisco this year.
Nick Bosa is going to be a problem. There's no way around it. He's going to be a problem. I mean, Lane Johnson hasn't allowed him sack in what feels like 5 years, honestly. I mean, he's allowed 6 pressures all year. And he did a pretty good job last week as well, dealing with that groin injury. But Bosa is going to be an issue. And the one thing, I mean, it's a fascinating matchup, right? Those two guys, but the Niners do a great job of moving Bosa around. So it's not going to be just Lane. They're going to have to double team him. You know, it's the worries, I suppose, with the Eagles is those quick linebackers as well. Like Fred Warner, like that's a guy that closes up gaps pretty quickly. He can get after the quarterback. He can shoot up those gaps. He can do a good job. I mean, he's going to be shadowing, certainly have like a bit of a spy on Jalen Hurts, but I think we'll see maybe some doubles on Bosa. There's only so much you can do, I guess, here, Tom, in that situation. But Lane Johnson has one of the best. It really is best on best. It's strength on strength. It's a team that just does not allow a lot on the ground. And it's one team that has a lot of success running the football over the last 2 years. They've been the best rushing team in football because of what Mike mentioned. The offensive line does a great job of opening up some holes and opening up some lanes. This is a different offense. San Fran's never seen an offense like this. They do struggle against mobile quarterbacks. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of the best matchups, I think, this weekend in particular between the two guys. But I'd say some doubles, but Bosa's going to be moved around on either side of the football on the line of scrimmage.
It harkens back to me to the battles between John Runyon and Michael Strahan once upon a time. It could be really, really interesting. And on top of that, we mentioned it, Lane Johnson was a full participant in practice today. However, he has a groin injury that will require surgery once the season is over. And Lane Johnson, unfortunately, is constantly in and out of the lineup. I do want to get to a question here in the comments section from Tyler A question regarding receiving yards. And I know we're going to touch on a bunch of different Eagles players in our best bet segment. The question from Tyler is, are we rocking with A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith? Mike, I'm going to start with you because A.J. Brown looked like he might have sustained some sort of injury towards the end of the game against the Giants, was obviously frustrated on the sideline. Sal Paolantonio was reporting on it through the week that whatever it was has been resolved, but that's been kind of kept hush-hush by the Eagles. What do you expect?
Yeah, the key with me is I look at how teams have done against the opposing receivers, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. San Francisco has been very good against lead wide receivers. They're 4th in DVOA against number 1s. They're only 18th against number 2s. Devonta Smith has really benefited from having A.J. Brown there. He's been a little volatile, and A.J. Brown certainly is the go-to guy, but I see opportunities. I would lean Smith. I would if I had a choice. But I think A.J. Brown can also do very well because he's a contested catch guy. So even though the Niners have been able to control these wide receiver ones, you're looking at a guy like a Dez Bryant, that sort of strength, who can go up and get that ball and get that prop in just one play. So, yeah, I'm fine with rolling with Smith here, but I think both of them, it's a tough matchup for the Niners. Even though they've been so good, I would lean Smith over Brown, though, because of their past struggles against wide receiver 2s.
Meaney, what do you think?
I think I lean Smith as well. I mean, AJ lit them up last year as a member of the Titans. I think he had like 11 catches, $145. And yeah, he was nicked up a little bit. But Devontae Smith, we're going to talk about him a little bit later on. This guy played 100% of the snaps last week. He's been among the leaders in contested catches since he entered the league. And last year as a rookie, he faced top coverage. And this year, as Mike mentioned, he's not getting that same sort of attention. But if there's a weakness on this Niners team, it is their secondary. And one thing I've noticed from the Eagles this year is they'll exploit whatever weakness you have. There was a matchup earlier this year against the Titans. They didn't even try to run on Tennessee. Tennessee was the best rush defense in football at the time. They didn't give up any rushing yards. The Eagles, I'm sure, could have had some rushing yards against them with all the weapons they have and the offensive line being the best in football, but they just torched them through the air in the secondary. And I think we're going to see that early and often because, of course, not breaking any news, the game plan to get up big, but I'll go back to it. If they do get up by a couple scores early, it is going to force Brock Purdy to drop back and throw the football. And with the pressure that they can dial up, it could be bad news. To see Dave Joseph talking weather favors San Fran, I totally disagree. At the link with the wind, I've been there multiple times. Tom, I know you have as well. Opposing quarterbacks have an issue throwing the football at the link if it is windy as well. So I think the weather would favor Philly here in this situation at home. And I do think that they're a better football team running the football if it does get a little crazy weather-wise.
Yeah, if it gets rainy, that's the forecast right now. So we'll keep an eye on that. We're going to circle back on a bevy of different Eagles players once we get to the best bet segment. Let's move on to the AFC Championship game on Sunday. That's going down at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, live on CBS. This line is constantly changing. I have seen it as -1 KC, -1.5 KC. Cincinnati, obviously, you can see here getting -1.5, but I highly recommend please keep an eye on this line because it is going to change. And a lot of that, Chris, is surrounding the health of one Patrick Mahomes and the right ankle sprain that the whole world has heard about at this point. And I have seen more doctors hop on ESPN to explain a high ankle sprain than I can ever remember in my life. It seems like Cincinnati has all the momentum coming into this. And to think about, emotion coming into this, which I always think is critically important, the ripple effect of the DeMar Hamlin situation and near tragedy has turned into this motivating factor for the Cincinnati Bengals, and that they're ticked off. They're thrilled that this isn't going to a neutral site, that refunds have been issued, that this isn't being played in Atlanta. They want to go into Kansas City, and they believe they have the Chiefs' numbers. So how do you feel about all this momentum surrounding Joe Burrow and the Bengals?
Yeah, I mean, they're feeling it. That's for sure. It's very similar to last year. They've won 10 straight, 12 of their last 13. They've been underdogs in a lot of their games. I think they've covered 9 straight as underdogs as well. You mentioned owning them. Yeah, absolutely. They do. Right. And Burrow is perfect against Mahomes. He's 3-0, and they've won in every different way. And that's kind of what I like about the Bengals. They've won with Jamar and Burrow lighting them up. Chase has got 4 touchdowns in the 3 matchups. They've won with their defense. They've came back twice, down 14, down 18 last year at Arrowhead or whatever they're calling it now. What, Burrowhead? I don't know.
Yeah, if I hear one more Burrow pun, I'm going to lose it.
I heard that this morning. I don't think you want to be talking about that too much. I know like Jones came to the presser this morning or this afternoon, and I think he brought it up 4 times in the press conference. I don't think any bulletin board material is always something to laugh at. These guys don't need extra motivation at this point of the season, but Kansas City has a lot to prove, in my opinion. And I think the difference between these two squads is defensively. Kansas City is great offensively, and they did not miss a beat without Tyreek Hill. Number 1 in pass DVOA, according to Football Outsiders, as you see there. Number 1 in total yards, passing touchdowns. Mahomes going to win the championship. But the defense, so this is what you see here. The defense is the big difference between these two teams. You look at it from an analytical standpoint, they're just an average defense. They've allowed 32 passing touchdowns, 33, the most in football. Part of that is because they make teams force the issue and push the pace up a little bit. But how about the left side? How about this Bengals squad? 58.9% completion rate against. That's number 1 in football. 17 passing touchdowns allowed, the 3rd fewest. This defense is really good. DJ Reader is a beast, at stopping the run. And ultimately, their secondary has made Mahomes look a little human over the past couple of matchups. It's tough to beat a team 4 times in 2 years. It's basically in 14 months. They beat them 3 times in a calendar year. It's wild to think about because Mahomes has had his way with everybody across the league. But Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator of the Bengals, did such a really good job last year of bracketing Travis Kelce. Doesn't have to worry about Tyreek Hill now. I don't know if he's going to bring pressure, if he's going to mix it up a little bit because Mahomes has that high ankle sprain. I know he's practicing in full, but it's going to be a problem, I think. And that's one of the strong suits of Mahomes to extend plays. I think this Bengals team is going to take it to them again. I really do.
I tend to agree with that, Mike. In regards to Mahomes, say he's able to fight through whatever pain he's feeling. How do you bet this Kansas City offense?
Yeah, I think that sometimes we hear things, and I tend to just believe the opposite. So if we heard all week that Mahomes was really struggling, then I expect him to come out and throw for 350 yards. We're hearing, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. It's almost like they're willing it to happen. I think he's going to be limited. I think he's definitely going to be battling. Obviously, he's a great player, so he can work through it. But I expect Andy Reid, because Andy Reid's a great game schemer. He is. They've had a lot of chatter this week, spoiler alert, of Kadarius Toney getting involved in the offense. And I think they are missing that dynamic with Tyreek Hill. Remember, their wide receivers have not been fantastic this year. I love Isaiah Pacheco from Rutgers out here in Jersey. Thank you very much. But McKinnon has been very good. But as Chris just said, the defense of the Bengals has limited Travis Kelce in the past. So I don't see that changing. I think if I'm the Bengals, I'm coming in saying, I want to see these wide receivers beat me. Well, who are we going with? Juju Smith-Schuster? Who is really beating them at the wide receiver? Valdez-Scantling can go deep, but he can drop the pass every time. So I think you're going to see short, quick, dynamic stuff trying to get after the catch. And I think Toney will be involved because, quite frankly, Tom, I don't think the Chiefs can win by just going with Kelce and their traditional offense. Hill was an explosive player that got them up 21-3. They don't have that now. So I don't think they can go in with the same game plan. And I trust Andy Reid, after losing 3 in a row, is going to mix it up a little bit.
And especially the way that the Chiefs have leaned on Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco in the run and the passing game, as you saw some of the stats there, 9th in rushing, but 20th in rushing yards per game. So there's no real expectation for this Chiefs offense to all of a sudden turn into some massive rushing attack. Everybody is still anticipating this being a Patrick Mahomes type game. The question is, Chris, is this going to be a situation where he's going to have to throw 35, 40, 45 times to keep them competitive, or do they actually put away the Bengals, in a reasonable fashion and more of a traditional passing effort? Who knows?
Yeah, I think they may want to try to establish the run, to keep maybe the pressure off Mahomes. And this Bengals team is really good at stopping the run, right? I mentioned DJ Reader. It was a great acquisition that they got. He does a really good job of, again, another guy that just kind of shoots up the gap and can stop the run. And what Mahomes did last week, just so impressive to go into Buffalo. Chip on their shoulder all they want. They got touchdown celebrations where they're like flipping coins and kicking it up in the sky. It's like, yeah, I get it. They feel like they should have home field. They feel like this should have been theirs. They feel like they shouldn't have had to flip a coin if they lost week 18 to the Ravens to have that division locked up. But Mahomes went into Buffalo in what was awful weather, and he picked apart that secondary. In these games, I have the box score in front of me, and all 3 of these matchups, they've been high scoring games. 27-24 this year. Last year, 27-24 overtime. 34-31 last year. A couple weeks left in the regular season before that big playoff tilt. Burrow's got 8 touchdowns to 1 pick. Mahomes has got 6 touchdowns and 2 picks. Burrow is cool, calm, collected. He's got that fine line where he's very confident, also a little bit of cockiness. How long is the window open? The Super Bowl window, it's open as long as I'm the quarterback here in Cincinnati, and I'm just buying everything he's selling. I think Mahomes is certainly going to have to he's going to have his best game, and both of these quarterbacks, I think, will bring it, even with like 60% of a right ankle for Mahomes. He's better than most in the game. I think he'll be just fine.
Oh, completely agree. Mike, how do you feel about Joe Burrow's protection, however?
Yeah, it's fascinating because coming into this year in the preseason, right, we always look back at our preseason takes. Some were good, some were bad. The big question was, is there going to be a regression from the Bengals? Because the team that has lost the Super Bowl usually regresses. And for about half the year, I had believed that, and we were celebrating. Week 6 to 8, Joe Burrow sacked. It was in those games sacked 11 times in those 3 weeks. In the subsequent 10 games after that, Burrow has been sacked 17 times. It's only 1.7 per game. If you take out the 5-sack performance by the Ravens the other day, that number drops to just 1.3. So the biggest difference to me with the Bengals that changed their season from falling into the trap of teams always underperforming after a Super Bowl loss is the offensive line that they tried to bolster. Because remember, they took Chase over Penny Sewell 2 years ago. That was a big thing. They then went back to the offensive line. It wasn't protecting him. And then magically after week 8, everything has changed. So again, going back to what Chris said, I just don't see the Chiefs getting enough attack on Burrow. I think he's going to be protected well. And if you protect Joe Burrow with those weapons, that's a problem.
I'm favoring the over on the points in this game. That's assuming that Mahomes is able to go, but I see a lot of points because I don't feel as confident in the pass rush from either team in this game as I do about what the 49ers and the Eagles are able to do. So we'll keep an eye on that.
One thing I will say that could be an interesting player, and I was thinking about coming in here with a prop, is Samaje Perine. Yes. He's a really good pass blocker, and I know everyone looks at Mixon as a great pass catcher, and he is. I mean, Mixon is a really good pass catcher. He's had some great games this year, but Samaje Perine was a big part of their playoff run last year. It's the same sort of deal with the offensive line. I mean, he was sacked 9 times, I think, in that divisional matchup against the Titans, and they still found a way to win the game, even with Burrow not doing a whole lot. So don't be surprised if Perine is out there. I see some people last week messaging me, why is Perine on the field so much? Where is Mixon? But third down situations, it's Perine. 2-minute drill stuff, it's Perine. His receiving yard prop is 15.5. I think he caught 4 or 5 passes last week. He is a sneaky player to maybe take a look at in your one and done pools, or I'm interested in the 15.5 receiving yards. It's not one of my favorite plays this week, but I do believe he's going to have to be in there to protect Burrow, and also maybe they lean on the ground game a little bit more, Randall. They didn't have any success at all year running the football. Maybe they were saving Mixon for the playoffs, but last week they ran the ball, and they ran the ball really well. And that's one thing to do when you're lacking offensive linemen. It could, alleviate the pressure and just kind of run the football a bit.
Yeah, I see Jerry in the chat. We've gone back and forth in social media, me and Jerry in the chat, about Samaje Perine. I think Samaje Perine plays a big role here. He had 5 targets, 5 receptions. You brought it up. He is a really good pass blocker. And when he's in there on third down, 2-minute drill right before the half, he could get 2-3 receptions very, very quick here. And they trust him. Sometimes he's going to vulture at the goal line. So I agree. That opened at, I think, 14.5. Now it's 15.5. Wouldn't be surprised, guys, to see that get up to 16.5 by the time we get to kickoff.
A lot can happen between today and Sunday. Remember, the NFC Championship game is at 3, the AFC Championship game at 6:30, so you have plenty of time to do all your homework. We're going to give you, speaking of what Chris was just talking about, best bets. It is time for 3 and out. So let's start with the bronze pick from Mike. We've been talking a lot about quarterbacks. I know there's a quarterback you like coming into this weekend.
Yeah, on this one, I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts under 47.5 rushing yards. My argument is this: you have to pick the props how you think the game is going to go. I happen to think the Eagles are going to win comfortably, but even so, listen to what he said. He just admitted today, they asked him about his shoulder. He said, no, it's never an excuse, but I certainly have felt better. That's, guys, from a quarterback of a number 1 seed at home at a championship game, conference championship. That's as close as you're going to get to an admission as I'm banged up. That means to me off-season surgery. That means to me at least significant rest. Even for the majority of this year, when he was healthy for the majority of this year, fell short of this number 9 of the 16 times. San Francisco, 5th fewest rushing yards allowed to opposing quarterbacks this year, just 12.5 yards per game. Eagles have a great offensive line. They have a bevy of running backs. There's no need for Hurts to do this. If they get down to San Francisco and he's got to scramble to come back, I get it, but I don't project the game to be that way. Hurts will not run unless it's wide open because that shoulder. I think he will slide quickly. A lot of factors coming together for this. I do think Brock Purdy turns into a pumpkin, and I think the Eagles win comfortably. So whether it's game script, whatever you want, if you look at these lines across all sports books, they're very even. -115, -115. There's no real juice advantage. The numbers are all around 45 to 47.5. So let's take the 47.5 and go under with Jalen Hurts, because I don't think he's going to have to run. And I think the Eagles, with their running backs, can move the ball without putting him in danger.
I completely agree with that, because he's just been protecting himself, and admittedly been protecting himself very, very well the last few weeks that he's been out there. So that's been obviously a focal point from coaching. Sticking with the bronze pick, Chris, this is shocking. You've picked an under, just like Randall did. I cannot believe this.
What is going on here? It's not a full-on just straight the Eagles homer show. What does it make, like, how do you feel when you hear Randle say that the Eagles are going to win comfortably? It's like a full-on Philly thing here.
I'm always the pessimist, the realist type of Eagles fan, an Eagles fan, basically. So to hear people be confident, that makes me worried. I don't like that.
Yeah, it's a little uneasy, but Randall's spot on with his analysis of Jalen Hurts. I mean, there was a couple runs I noticed last week where he ran the ball a little bit more. There were certainly some design runs. There was only one in week 18. I think he averages like 4.8 design runs per game, but there was a couple runs where he would have just put his shoulder down and powered through the linebackers. And instead he kind of just absorbed the contact and then went down on the other shoulder. So I really do like that prop, but yeah, I'm going with an under here. It's the first time. It's taken us 21 weeks here to get to this point, but here it is. Quez Watkins under 15.5 receiving yards for the Philadelphia Eagles. Snap count last week, only 22 snaps, 31%. Mentioned earlier in the show, Devontae Smith played 100% of the snaps. He did not leave the field. AJ Brown, 51. Pascal Zach played ahead of Quez, 34%. Now, he is the better pass blocker, and that was part of the game script last week, to run all over a Giants defense that had allowed the second most rushing yards per carry. Now, this defense is certainly really tough. We talked about that earlier with the Niners here, but no targets for Quez last week, just 3 catches over his last 4 games. He's just not a factor anymore. Now, if this game got into a shootout, which I don't expect it to, I think it's going to be low scoring. I mentioned how I think Purdy's going to struggle, and this Niners defense is really good. If it got it to a point where it was really high scoring and the Niners secondary couldn't lock down AJ or Devontae, then we could see Quez maybe more involved, but I just don't really see that happening. And he's just hasn't been a factor since Dallas Goedert returned to the lineup, or when Dallas Goedert is in the lineup. 12 games with Goedert, he's been below 16 receiving yards in 7 of those 12. 6 of the 12, he's just straight up had 0 receiving yards. And more importantly, 4 of his last 5, he's been under 15.5. He only averages 10.7 yards per catch. It was 15 in each of his first 2 seasons. But with A.J. Brown back into the lineup is really, he's just taken a hit in this offense. And Jimmy Ward is decent in the slot. So I don't think it's a fantastic matchup. I think we'll see him roughly in around 20%, 25% of the snaps again. Kyle Murray in the house. And under, what is going on? Freaky Friday here today. Yeah, Quez Watkins under 15.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, Kyle Murray couldn't stay away. He was too blown away by that choice. Yeah. We mentioned that in this best bet segment, we were going to have a lot of Eagles players involved. So for the silver pick, let's head back to Mike. This is an Eagles running back.
Yeah, I'm going Miles Sanders over 55.5 rushing and receiving yards. A lot of times people get caught up with all the Niners run defense. What about the Eagles rushing offense? Miles Sanders has been very involved, and I'm tethering this to Jalen Hurts. If I think Jalen Hurts is not going to be running a lot, I think Miles Sanders may be. You look at his last 4 games, guys, 21 rushing attempts, 12, 11, 17. He's getting some rushing attempts in the red zone. He got 6 rushing attempts against Dallas in week 16, 5 red zone rushing attempts week 18 against the Giants, then came back the following week, had 2 rushing attempts. Doesn't get a ton of receptions, but you never know these championship games. Things get a little bit out of hand. He's had multiple games with 3. I think he's had 3 receptions or more in 4 games. His receiving yardage prop is only 4.5, but the number for the receptions is 1.5. So I think he actually gets 1. Maybe he picks up 4 or 5 yards there just to cover me. The rushing yardage prop is around 50.5, but you never know. He's so explosive. Maybe they dump one off him and he goes for 10, 12 yards, and that gets us over there. I understand they share it. I understand people worry about running back by committee, but I do think, like I said, pick the props as you think the game's going to go. I think the Eagles win. I think in the fourth quarter, Sirianni is famous for shortening the game in the third and fourth quarter. He will slow it down like molasses. How do you do that? You run the ball. I know Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, fine. Give me Miles Sanders over 55.5. Combine it. Maybe gets a nice little 10, 15-yard one to put us over. But I think Miles Sanders very involved on a great season, guys. 2 years ago, couldn't score a touchdown. This year, positive touchdown regression.
And we'll see what his future holds. I know he wants to be a Philadelphia Eagle for life. I would expect Kenneth Gainwell to continue to be a big part of the offense this week. I don't know if I expect the same Boston Scott G-Men magic that we've seen as of late this season. Yeah. So if you're looking at props for Boston Scott, I personally, just having seen this dance before, possibly being a little bit lower than usual and a little bit more for Gainwell. So this is a game where Scott maybe gets tucked away, use a little bit more in special teams. Speaking of running backs, let's stick with the silver pick here for Chris. And it's not an Eagle player. We're done with the Eagles for a moment.
We're done with the Eagles, and we have to revisit them in just a little
for
bit.
a moment.
But yeah,
yes.
it's just, you got to paint these game scripts. You got to feel like, you have to take a stand on how you think these games are going to go. And, I talked about Mahomes earlier, and, he's limited and great. He's practicing in full. I still feel like he is going to be limited to an extent. And one of his best abilities is spinning around like a ballerina, and it looks like he's got nothing to do but toss it away. And all of a sudden he finds Jerick McKinnon in the end zone, all open, just like, here I am. I'm right here for you, Mahomes. Nice little shovel pass. Didn't really do a whole lot last week, but I do expect him to be heavily involved this week. Like we talked about with Samaje Perine, I think he's the better pass blocker. He's the veteran back here in this offense. He's certainly the pass catching running back inside this offense as well. Jerick McKinnon over 29.5 receiving yards, heavily juiced to get 4 grabs. He's had at least 4 grabs in 5 of his last 11 games. That may not seem spectacular, that number, but if you go look at the games that he didn't, let's say week 18 against Las Vegas when they blew him out by 30 points, I mean, he's not really a factor in the passing game. He's averaging 9.1 yards per catch. It's a career best. Career season from him, really. 56 targets, 71 grabs, 512 receiving yards, 9 receiving touchdowns. 9 receiving touchdowns. Only Adams, Kelsey, Kittle, A.J. Brown, Diggs, and Lockett had more receiving touchdowns than this running back. And the last 6 weeks, he's had massive receiving yard games. 5 for 52, 3 for 31, 8 for 70, 7 for $112. He's had some big receiving yard games. He's led the Chiefs multiple times in receptions, targets, and receiving yards. And what we talked about earlier, looking for somebody to step up inside this offense. Somebody is going to have to step up. There's no Tyreek Hill here this time for this rematch in the AFC Championship game. The Bengals did such a great job of bracketing and trying to limit Travis Kelce. It's really tough to limit Travis Kelce, clearly. But I think they're going to do a much better job than the Jags did last week. All the attention is going to be on Travis Kelce. I believe somebody is going to have to step up in this matchup. So I like a lot of props here for McKinnon. I see a nice little 3.5, 4.5 catches at plus 120. I'm interested in that. The over rushing and receiving over at Bet Rivers using our prop shop is 57.5. FanDuel is hanging 63.5 at the same number. You're getting 6 fewer yards there. I believe he's going to catch 4 or 5 passes. And I think he's going to get like 7 to 8 carries too, because he's going to be on the field protecting Mahomes. If Burrow lights them up, which he's had some success doing, then he's going to be on the field again, catching, in 2-minute drill situations and late in the fourth quarter, potentially. Maybe we get another overtime game between these two as well. So we haven't projected for over 60 total yards. I like the receiving yards, and I like the total at 57.5.
Wouldn't that be something if we got another OT game? Oh my God.
Mike,
sticking with what Chris just said, that leads perfectly into your gold pick, because is this your gold pick, the Kansas City Chief player that is going to step up?
Yes, I think it is, Tom. Of course, it's Kadarius Toney over 35.5 receiving yards. Folks, Kadarius Toney is going to be involved. Just look at what's being said about him this week, and particularly today. Offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy talked about how great he's been. He's studying. We love what he brings to the offense. Heck of a job, talented. You can get him in the red zone. All of those things are true. Since Kansas City has not won any of the last 3 games against the Bengals, you have to assume that they have to do something different in order to win. Kadarius Toney has been involved lately. He's been explosive. He's done a very, very nice job in getting acclimated to this offense. And I think they see what he brings, and I think they're going to get him the ball. I like what Chris is saying about McKinnon, but I think McKinnon is the guy that they're preparing for. I think the one the Bengals are going to say, let's see if he can do it, is Toney. Last week, 7 targets, 5 receptions, 36 yards, only a 29.9% snap share. But this receiving yardage prop is low enough for Kadarius Toney, a guy I did not like because he only had 1 year of college production in Florida, didn't do well with the Giants in a couple games. He got hurt. Now he's in an ideal system to take advantage of his talents. The Bengals also are second worst in the league against opposing wide receiver twos. The only team that was worse was Dallas this year. So who is the wide receiver two? I think Toney can fit that role. They're going to concentrate on Kelsey. I like McKinnon. I also like Kadarius Toney here, guys, over 35.5. And the FTN prop shop, and I'm not getting paid to say this, they fire me tomorrow. You can bring it back, and I will tell you that the prop shop is the place to go, because we go in there, you type in Kadarius Toney or any player you want, and you see all of the receiving yardage totals. Right now I'm looking at it. You can go from over 19.5 at Unibet, which is minus 335. So we definitely think he's getting over 19.5 to where we currently have it at. People have it at 35.5. That's where I'm going with it. I think with the better juice, it's going to be Toney over here. I think he can get going, because I do think the Chiefs are going to keep this close. And the question is, if it's not going to be Kelsey and it's going to be McKinnon, like Chris said, who's the other person? I think it's going to be Kadarius Toney.
I have to agree with you, and keep an eye on Isaiah Pacheco. That continues to be a threat. Let's round out our 3 and out segment with the final gold pick. And yes, we're going back to the Philadelphia Eagles here.
I will say I kind of like Brendan Ayuk too. He's got a low receiving yard prop, 44.5, but I feel better about Devontae Smith here. This guy has been overlooked. He's been overshadowed by AJ Brown. AJ Brown has been fantastic. A nice get. Could you imagine this Eagles squad if this is not a shot at Treylon Burks? I mean, Chris Olave is great as well. They could have taken one of those young guys in the draft. They went out and got an alpha wide receiver, and it has really overshadowed what Devontae Smith has done this season. 95 grabs, the 8th most in football, 8+ targets in 10 straight games. He's cleared his catch prop in 7 straight games. It's been plus money. I've taken it every single week. It's been plus money. I keep taking it, and we keep cashing. This is just the second week. It's been at 5.5. Last week it was 5.5 at plus 110. This week it's 5.5 at plus 125. I mentioned the 7 straight games he's cleared it, 6+ grabs in 4 straight, 5+ grabs in 7 straight, and 9 of his last 10. And this is really how you beat the 49ers. I do agree with Randall's pick on Miles Sanders. You know, the lane opens up so much. He can get to that number in really 12 carries, honestly, even against this stout defense. But this is how you beat San Fran. They've allowed the 6th most receiving yards to wide receivers. I like the receiving yard prop here with Devontae at 65.5. Just look at some of the massive games here. I mean, even just AJ Green in week 18, 91. Devontae Adams is a different beast, but $153. Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson both had over 70. Dotson had 6 grabs, kind of plays a similar role as Devontae Smith. You know, both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf over 55. Like, there's been some really big receiving yard games against this secondary. And according to our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, this is the second best matchup on the slate. Diamador Lenore has a 72% catch rate. And what I really like with Devontae, and I'm sure you noticed this as well, Tom, is they just find a way to get him the ball in, you know, he's a great route runner. He's fantastic. And according to some of our metrics, I mean, he's been top 10 in contested catch rate over the past 2 years, but there's been a bubble screen for him, a couple like quick slants, the RPO, you know, passes at the line of scrimmage to get the ball in his hands and kind of just watch him get those 8 to 10 yards pretty easily. It's really astonishing to see, because he's a small, tiny guy, but he can find a way to get open. He's got great hands, and I love the matchup here this week. And these two have been doing it for years. Jalen Hurts and Devontae, go back to the Bama days. You know, when there's a 3rd and short situation, I find Jalen Hurts looks to Devontae. There's a connection between these two guys. They're very comfortable. And yeah, Mike is sitting there pointing the head, right? It's a rhythm that they've had now for years and years. And it's like pitch and catch all the time. So I'm taking the over 5.5. I feel pretty good about it.
And even the limited time in the pros for Devontae Smith, he has consistently been the chain mover for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'd say second to that is Dallas Goedert. A.J. Brown can certainly do that, but he's more the big adrenaline shot in the arm, so to speak. Devontae Smith does a really good job of keeping this passing game on schedule, which is something you really cannot put on paper in terms of value. He is fantastic in that respect. And as you put it, he's consistent and he wins people a lot of money. So that's the important part. Guys, do we have our winners and losers for the weekend? Mike, I'll start with you. Winning teams on both sides. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be I think it's going to be Bengals, and I think it's going to be Eagles. I would love for the social media stories to have the Andy Reid revenge game. Chiefs and Eagles would be fantastic.
Ooh.
But I will tell you right now, I am more positive with the Eagles. I will be shocked if the Niners come in and win this game. Bengals, Chiefs, I can go either way, but I don't think Mahomes is 100%. So give me Cincinnati going back to the Super Bowl. How about that for the Bengals? Tremendous against the Philadelphia Eagles. Just for you guys to know, very comfortable with this one with the Eagles, guys, just to make you feel
It
good.
makes
Chris,
me feel so sick.
It makes me so nervous. Chris, what do you think?
That's what I got too. It really is. Before the playoffs happened, I did have the Niners going to the Super Bowl. I felt like they were the most complete team in the NFC, but I was pretty worried about where this Eagles team was in terms of their injuries. Like with Jalen Hurts, I didn't feel like he was 100%, and he's not. I mean, we talked about it on the show. He's not 100%. And Lane Johnson, but getting Maddox back in the secondary, just having Lane there, it's kind of like Mahomes, right? Even though he's not 100%, just having him there is a big part of this offense and what they've been able to do over the years. So I do believe they're a complete team. I give them benefit of the doubt because of the home field. So I think that they're going to win, not comfortably, but I do think that they're going to win. And then I like the Bengals, right? The odds have to be against Joe Burrow to beat a team like Mahomes and Andy Reid 4 times in like 14 months. It seems crazy to even think about. But as I said earlier, I do believe the difference between these two teams is defensively. And I think the Cincinnati defense is underrated. I love the play calling. I love the scheme that they've run. They've kept Mahomes on his toes, and Mahomes does have that sprained ankle, and I think it is going to play a big factor in this game. So I think either way, we should have a great Super Bowl. Whichever teams win, there's going to be some fun narratives. And since he wins, we'll talk all summer between who's the better quarterback, because it's going to happen.
Oh yes,
that's true.
So it'll be a debate forever.
Hey guys, really quick, a group poll here. Who would you take right now for the next 5 years? Josh Allen or Joe Burrow?
Just Joe Burrow. It's not
Joe
even
Burrow.
a debate for me.
Would you have said that beginning of the year? It's weird.
Right? I may not have. I may not have, but Burrow just continues to impress, right? He continues to kind of define odds. He wins big moments. If you give Allen, T. Higgins, and Chase, maybe it's a bit of a different debate. Of course, like there's better weapons for Cincy, but man, Joe Burrow is just he just makes all the right plays, and he's so on point. And we talked last week, I think Randall Allen kind of plays this hero ball and gets himself in trouble sometimes with turnovers.
Yeah, very true.
And his ability to run is important, but how long is that going to last? I think that's always something. Look at how Lamar Jackson's value is being questioned week to week. I'm not saying he's Lamar Jackson, but in terms of running quarterbacks, he's certainly at that upper echelon. I don't know if it's a huge margin between the two quarterbacks. It's not like, Mahomes to Allen. I think that's a big gap in terms of just overall ability. But Burrow right now, everything he's doing, he's firing on all cylinders. So we'll see who's headed to the Super Bowl. He's Mike Randle. That's Chris Meaney. I'm Tom Hannifan. Thank you so much for joining us as always. We encourage you to follow as many of the FTN family of social media accounts as possible, because we will be doing a preview of the Super Bowl. Chris, I know we've been thinking about what day we're going to do that exactly, but just follow everybody. Turn on notifications, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we will make sure we get you the information that you need. So enjoy this championship weekend in the 2023 NFL playoffs.